you love creating lasting memories with your kids? You're going to love these ideas in today's podcast.
This is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. Welcome to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Your host, Felice Gerwitz, is an author, a publisher, and your radio show host. She will encourage, educate, and inspire you with answers to your most pressing questions from homeschool, marriage, parenting, and much more. Felice loves to equip moms to live a Christian life because every moment counts. Be sure to visit her website at mediaangels.com. And here's your host, Felice Gerwitz.
Hi and welcome. So glad to have you here today. This is Felice Gerwitz, and today I am thankful for our sponsor, Sony Animations and Affirms Films, for bringing us The Star, the story of the first Christmas. We're thankful to our sponsors for helping us to provide wonderful free broadcasting for you and your family. Visit the show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com, podcast 232, and check out the links to the movie trailer to see if it's a good fit for your family, as well as the notes for this episode. So today we're going to focus on upcoming holidays, and without a doubt, Halloween is around the corner as I record this, and it creates all kinds of controversy. There's people who love it, and there's people who hate it, and for various different reasons. And if you're looking for some fun alternatives, you don't want to miss today's episode. So just a quick background check on why we Gerwitzes prefer to have Halloween alternatives. And one of them is my husband and I, neither one of us liked the holiday. Jeff was always sent out on a mission by his family, his dad in particular, to get as much candy as he could in the neighborhood. And he was really scared as a kid with all of the, the things that are supposed to be a joke on, things that might scare kids, kind of worked in reverse for him and for me. So on the other hand, I'm one of these people who hates to dress up for Halloween, and I really hate costume parties and all that. Yeah, I know. I am just not a very good sport with that kind of thing. But I just really didn't like it, and so the both of us together, when we were talking about what we wanted to do with our kids, we were really glad to hear that neither one of us liked it. So it was really easy for us to say, okay, well, we're going to come up with some alternatives that we're going to do with our children someday. Well, fast forward, and we have kids, and a lot of parents worry about avoiding Halloween because their kids are going to miss out on candy. Well, I'm here to tell you that in all the years of not celebrating Halloween, and all the years I've homeschooled, I have to say our kids have way more candy than they would have if they just went out and got it in the neighborhood. And then also, there's a lot of different reasons why people don't celebrate Halloween, and I have another podcast on the network. And if you want to hear some different opinions on the topic, all you have to do is go to the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network, and in that search bar on that front page, you can type in Halloween and hear some of the other podcasters and some of their podcasts on the topic. But anyway, as I was saying, we fast forwarded and found ourselves with a house full of kids, and we were ready to focus on some meaningful activities with our kids. So these are the things we looked at. We wanted wholesome activities that don't break the bank, right? We wanted to avoid stores and restaurants because that just seemed like, some people were on overload. I remember going to get my hair done at one particular place, and they had this sound effect every time you opened the door, which got old when you were sitting inside the place and people kept going in and out. And everybody just loved it, and I would avoid it, that whole place, the whole month of October, because it was really irritating to me. And they went all out. I mean, decorated it, every single little square inch of that place. So you get people, who really, go all out with that. And then the people that, like me, who it gets irritating after a while. I mean, I wanted to go get my hair cut and have a few minutes of peace of quiet. You know how we are moms when we have that little bit of a chance to, have a little time away. And that kind of backfired there. And another point I wanted to make is I like to create memories with my children. I remember my uncle was one of 14 kids. Can you believe that? And his mother was the most beautiful thing. I remember seeing a picture of their entire family with his little mom standing in the middle of all those children. And she really was just a beautiful woman. I never met her, but just from the pictures, she was radiant. And he was saying to me that the best thing about families was the memories that we create. And whenever he would come over here for some kind of family occasion, he would always remind me of that. So that's always been important to me, to be able to create those memories with my kids. So we didn't really need to look very far. I live in an area that's not fall friendly. I live in Southwest Florida. We have some wonderful beaches and great parks, but nothing that gives you that fall leaf feeling. So one of the things I do each year in my home is I decorate for fall. Through the years, I've purchased silk flowers. I've looked for them on sale, and I really buy them at the end of the season. I just have to store them all year, but it's a great way to get wonderful deals. And I decorate my house. So everywhere I look, even as I'm, writing this, I was writing my show notes earlier, but as I was sitting in my family room and I could look around and see all of the beautiful decorations, and it makes me feel that fall, feeling, even though today got all the way down to 68 degrees, I think it was today. So I was super excited. We had the doors open and everything else, turned the air off. So for us, it kind of let the fall feeling came through in the weather. But it also, allows you to do things like, use the pumpkin spices. And the other day I made pumpkin bread and, I got a fresh pumpkin and pureed it, and it was really great. The second thing is I always included the kids in everything. And it was a great incentive to get their schoolwork done if they knew we were going to be planning doing some activities. And even when they got older, they were on board. I'm going to give you a little hint for those of you who struggle sometimes with your teens to get them to participate in things. I never had a problem because I always had something else they could do. So it was it would go something like this. We're going to be baking some cookies, but if you'd rather not do that, I have a couple of bathrooms you can clean, or the car needs to be washed, or, the driveway needs to be swept out, or the walkway, or whatever that is. If you live up north, there's probably leaves that need to be raked, right? That beautiful fall gets old very fast. And it's amazing how much enthusiasm you'll get from your teenagers when they are going to be participating, with you and little kids or whoever else is underfoot. They're really more than welcome to participate, but they're also going to be excited to help because they would rather do that than anything else, right? So, we just give our kids purposeful incentives, and that works really, really great. I mean, I have a whole lot of ideas of things that we've done through the years that have been so much fun, but we're going to take a really quick commercial break, and when we come back, I am going to share some great events that we participated in, all in, a way to celebrate the fall and avoid what we felt was a very scary event that we didn't really want a part of, and that was Halloween. So we'll be right back.
Affirm Films and Sony Pictures Animation present The Star, the fully animated story of the first Christmas told through a whole new set of eyes. Bo the donkey and his stable of animal friends follow the star to become some unlikely heroes.
That light, that's the star. This is where it's been leading me. What's his name?
His name is Jesus.
The Star, now playing. Rated PG, parental guidance suggested. More information is available at thestarmovie.com.
Hey everyone, and welcome back. This is Felice Gerwitz with Vintage Homeschool Moms. This is episode 232, and you can find the show notes at vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Well, Halloween alternatives come in all shapes and sizes, and you don't even have to limit it to Halloween time or October or anything. You can really do a whole lot of things that are creating memories with your kids no matter what the time of the year. So the first is look for festivals in your town. There are fall festivals all over this town. They can be at a church or at a park. The second is you can have a party at your house. I've listed both a smaller party and a larger party. One year, the kids asked me if, one year we had a really big party here. A homeschool group got together. Everybody brought, a small bag of candy, which ended up with way too much candy by the time we were done. Moms brought cookies, and we all had, we were in charge of one game that we brought to the event. So we had, like beanbag tosses and ring tosses and things like that. And as the kids went around and they participated, they got candy. So it was really fun. It was a fun event. And then we've done it years in the past where they would just have fun doing the events and go from station to station. They would have a certain amount of tickets that they could use. And then after that, they just got their candy when they left. So that way you didn't have kids, eating candy. And especially if there's some dietary restrictions or if they're not used to eating candy, sometimes that's all the kids wanted to do was just take their bag of candy and go sit in the corner and do that. So one of the great things, because of the dark, and we live on a couple of acres, is the kids had these glow bracelets and they would just play different games like tag, and they just had a blast. It was really, really fun. We also had Christmas parties along those lines where I'd have luminaries lighting the sidewalk, and it would go all the way to the backyard. And there we would have, games for the kids to do, and even sometimes just letting them run around. They loved doing that. But one year the kids had said, hey, Mom, we want to have our own little party and not have such a big party. And so we did that, and that was really great. So we just had like another family over. Other times it was just our family, and we would, sit around and, maybe have a little campfire going on the deck or out in the backyard with wood. And I had, really pretty lights strung up, and I just loved it. I loved the whole ambiance of being out in the dark and just, in the protection of our own yard. It was fun. One of our friends that lives out here had a barbecue at her house. And she talked about going all out. She had hay rides for the kids. She kind of had a working farm. They had some hogs and they had chickens and things like that, and a garden. So they had, hay rides and pumpkin treats and snacks, and they got to dress up, and it was really great. And in the different parties we've had, either the kids have dressed up, mostly the little ones want to. And it's funny because when they get to be around 10 or 11, some kids just really don't like to do that. My granddaughter quit dressing up last year, and she was, barely 10. As my daughter says, her oldest takes after me. So not surprising, right? And then there's all the, there are like All Saint Day parties that the kids can go to, where a kid dresses up in a costume that depicts a saint, such as Joan of Arc or St. Michael the Archangel. I think my kids all were St. Michael at one time or another because, of course, he has a sword, but then so does Joan of Arc. So, take your pick. Those were fun things that the kids did. And again, it was mostly when they were a lot younger. Another great event that we did was we just set up a bunch of carnival games and kind of did this similar to what we had at our party. We've done this kind of thing at the All Saints Day party. And so, my daughter's involved in a party that she's going to, and she called and said, "Do you have any darts?" And I said, "Not anymore. Why?" And she said, "Well, one of the games that she was going to have was a balloon with darts." And I said, "How old are the kids going to be?" Probably not a good idea. And then when the balloon pops, you got the little ones that might be scared. So I would recommend some other types of games like the bean bag toss or the rings. You can get those little plastic rings that you can throw on a empty, water bottles or things like that. You can also play games that are, I call them the tried and true, like, the pin the tail on the donkey or musical chairs, which is a fun one. The kids like to do things like freeze tag if you have more space to run around. That's also super fun. And everything to the kids anyway is much more fun in the dark. So if you're doing it in a contained space that's maybe not super lighted, like our yards wasn't lit a whole lot. There were some, we had hung up some lights and things like that, but there are not big lights around where I live. So our next door neighbor has a light on his property. So, but it's not like living in a neighborhood where, there's houses all around you and there could possibly be a lot of lights. So that just gives it a whole another, atmosphere for the kids, and they love that. And then, of course, there's the food. There's the roasting of s'mores, campfire songs and things like that. So if you know someone who has a guitar, they can bring it and lead some, really fun songs. Praise and worship songs are always fun, and silly songs are, super fun for the kids. And then one of the things we like to do when it was quieter and not with so many kids, although we have done this with a big group of kids, but we like to do it on our own as well, is, we sit around the fire and of course there's somebody monitoring the fire. We have rules when we did our campfires with a group, and that was not everyone can throw sticks in. Little ones have to stay way far back. We would have the seats pretty far back. And then we'd have parents sit there with their children so that, they were monitored. But kind of like after you go through all the rules, kind of takes all the fun out of it, right? But safety first. So we would go around and we would have a story starter. So we would, say, one day while I was creeping in the woods, I saw, and then the next person has to take that over. And so each person adds something to the story. You don't necessarily have to repeat the whole story. When it's a smaller group, it's kind of easier to do. It also depends on the kids' ages, but you can do that as well. There are the other stories or, games that kids play that, like I'm thinking of something that starts with an A, and that is apple. And then the next kid has to say A apple, B ball, and go on like that. So there's, again, lots of fun things you can do. And then, of course, there's always lots of goodies with the candy. So if you're hosting a party with a larger group, every family can bring some candy. But what to do with all that candy afterwards? So, we would do things like give back to the community. You can donate the candy. Or you could donate the money you would use to buy all the candy to a worthy cause. We've done some of that before. You can visit a nursing home or babysit for a friend so that they can have an evening out. But whatever you decide, include your children in the planning, especially when they're older. Like I said earlier, my kids had some definite ideas about hosting a party. And, they, when they were a little bit older, they asked, they still wanted to have a party, but they wanted to have a private party. And so, now my kids are older and we just hang out and, probably we'll do another campfire, have something on the grill and then go sit out and have a little campfire because our neighborhood where we live is so spread out that nobody comes to our neighborhood during Halloween anyway. So, but it doesn't matter if it's, if you're looking for alternatives, it's a great, thing to do. But it's always important to remember with your family that, keep your values solid. Don't let other people sway you. Because I had a lot of people that would talk me out of it and, try to talk me out of it. And it was, based on our experiences that my husband and I had, and I've done a lot of research on Halloween as well. But whatever your convictions are, just make sure that they're grounded and enjoy yourself. Making memories with your kids is of foremost importance, and I love it. It's something that I continue to do with my kids and now my grandkids. So it's a super fun time. I want to thank our sponsor again, Sony Animations and Affirms Films, for bringing us The Star. And if you want the show notes for today's episode, go to 232, podcast 232, vintagehomeschoolmoms.com. And I am so glad that you stopped by, and we've got some really great programming for you on the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network. I am going to be doing a podcast on kid-friendly movies, which I'm excited about, so I can share with you guys all about that in the next podcast. Take care, God bless, and talk to you soon. Bye-bye.
Thanks for tuning in to the Vintage Homeschool Mom Show. Visit Felice at MediaAngels.com and thevintagehomeschoolmoms.com. Vintage Homeschool Moms is a production of the Ultimate Homeschool Radio Network.